What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. How are we all getting on? The 2024 National Hurling League commences this weekend, and we're going to be here to preview this weekend's games, but we're also going to be giving our predictions for the 2024 National Hurling League, specifically looking at Divisions 1A and Divisions 1B. We will touch on briefly Divisions 2A and some of the lower divisions in the National Hurling League, but most certainly we will be prioritising the first two divisions, mainly because I suppose they're going to be the games we're going to be watching, and to be honest with you, my knowledge of hurling really outside of Division 1 and Division 2A to a certain extent really diminishes, and there's no point giving predictions about, Longford hurling or Wicklow hurling. I mean, and to be fair, like, hurling at the lower levels is so badly covered, you never see any games down there, you never hear of anything. The only time you hear of lower level hurling counties is actually when teams are like pulling out of competitions or managers aren't, wanting to manage the team, and it's just such a shame that hurling in the lower level counties is so ignored at the moment, and like the coverage is so bad. And I had more information or like more access, I would certainly try and cover it more, but it just does not seem to be that way at the minute, which is just a massive shame. Like, to be honest, it's actually easier to find out who's living in a village in West Bolivia than it probably is about the Longford hurling team. Like, that's just the reality of it. And yeah, like, it's just it's very hard to cover everything that goes on in the lower leagues in hurling, unfortunately. The hurling league is a little bit interesting in the sense that it's not really as important as the football league, and like, because of the way the hurling league is structured, it's very easy to tune out a hurling league, I'll be honest. Like, it's a bit underwhelming, and in the last couple of years I've not really been arsed with the hurling league. I didn't even make a predictions video last year because I wasn't really sure like what to actually make of it, and like, it's just the way it's structured. Like, when you look at Division 1A as an example, and I'll throw the league table up on the screen, the 6 teams are going to be in Divisions 1A. Like, straight away, like, you don't have to be a staunch hurling man, and you already know that Offaly is finishing 6th. You already know they're going to be in that relegation playoff. Looking at Division 1B, fair enough. This is a little bit more like, this isn't as much as a close case. Westmeath, Antrim, Dublin might all be in the mix in terms of finishing in the bottom place. But it's just the same teams coming up and down every year, and it's just like, there's no incentive really for any of the big teams to play their strongest teams, to really go after the league, especially when you've got the Munster round robin and the Leinster round robin, which, as we very well know, are almost like leagues in themselves. Like, they're very intense games, a lot of matches. The way the hurling championship is now structured, it makes it way more intense, and I just think that we really do need to do something about the hurling league moving forward. We're going to preview it, we're going to predict it, we're going to predict where I think every team is going to finish. So we'll start with Division 1A, and as I was saying earlier, in 6th I've gone for Offaly, and like, again, that's probably not that big of a surprise really when you look at the teams that are in this division. It's not really a slight on Offaly. Like, if Offaly were in Division 1B, I actually think they would be okay. Like, if you were to replace Offaly with Dublin, let's say, I think Dublin gets relegated from Division 1A and Offaly stays up in Division 1B. I actually think both teams probably swap places. Offaly go 4th in Division 1B and Dublin go bottom in Division 1A. Do you know that way? Like, I think it's not really a slight on Offaly, it's just that the other teams in this division are far better than Offaly. Like, they do have good players, Owen Cahill, Charlie Mitchell. They've obviously had a bit of a renaissance at underage level in the last few years. Adam Screeney looks an absolute superstar. I think Offaly hurling is going in the right direction, and when you look at maybe some other teams who've been in and around Offaly in the last couple of years possibly regressing, there is a chance for Offaly. And look, they might win a game in this division. Maybe they can beat a Wexford. Maybe they can topple a Waterford. It's not improbable, but I do think it's highly unlikely. So yeah, I'm going to go for Offaly in 6th. In 5th, I've gone for Clare, and one thing we're pointing actually out about the hurling league again is that a lot of teams rotate, a lot of teams try out younger players. So like, just because I've predicted Clare to finish in 5th, I don't necessarily think that Wexford and Waterford are better teams than Clare. I just think Clare, like, when you look back at them in the league in the last few years, they don't take it seriously whatsoever. And I think Clare's main focus, once again, is going to be on what is a very intense Munster Championship and also the All-Ireland Series. Because let's face it, that's ultimately what's going to matter for teams like Clare, like Cork, like Limerick. That's going to be the real focus for these teams. Like, when you look at Clare in the league in the last few years, they finished 4th in Division 1A last year. They finished 5th in Division 1A in 2022. And they finished 3rd in Division 1B in 2021. So for Brian Lohan's men, there just is no real focus on the league. And look, they've got 50 new players coming in from what I've heard, so there's going to be a huge amount of rotation. You'll see the likes of Shane O'Donnell, Tony Kelly, Mark Rogers, the key players for Clare, probably used sparingly throughout the league. And look, ultimately, with the fact that you've got Offaly in here, Clare for me will never be in danger of ending up in that relegation place. So, like, I've got them in 5th. And I think ultimately, look, even not playing that league semi-final and league final, it gives you a lot more time to prepare for the Munster round robin. So, yeah, I can see Clare doing, like, getting maybe one win on the board, a couple, like, enough points to stave off really any relegation worries. But I do think they won't get anywhere near a league final or anything like that, in my opinion. So in 4th, I've gone for Waterford. The reason why I've got Waterford ahead of Clare is that I do think Waterford do have a point to prove, because of how poor they were last year in the Munster Championship and also in the league as well. So, look, I think for Waterford, they do have a bit more of a point to prove, and I think they're a little bit more likely because of that to finish above someone like a Clare, in my opinion. It's a huge year, absolutely huge year for Waterford. Like, obviously the Ballygunner lads, will they feature with the fact that Ballygunner got knocked out earlier this time around in the All-Ireland series? That'll be hard to know. You're not going to have Austin Gleeson, no Shane McNulty, possibly no Conor Gleeson as well. Will Iarla Daly commit? Obviously playing Fitzgibbon Cup at the minute, so could he feature later in the league? That's hard to know. A lot of unknowns about Waterford, and it is a bit of a make or break year for Davy Fitz. I know it's the second year, but you need to see progress, because it was only a couple of years ago that Waterford were being touted as potential All-Ireland contenders and the side to eventually go on top of Limerick. So it's a massive year for Waterford. Ultimately, again, their focus will be on Munster and also on the All-Ireland series. Well, they'll need to get out of Munster first of all, won't they? So I think Davy Fitz will try different things out. He'll try different players out. He'll try different systems out. I think Patrick Fitzgerald could be a big player for Waterford in the league. Expecting big things of Desi Hutchinson as well. He needs to have a huge campaign for Waterford, because for me, he's one of the most skillful players in the country, and Waterford really need to be doing everything to get the best out of him. So I'll go for Waterford in 4th. A bit like Clare, their focus is going to be primarily on the Munster Championship, but I do think they'll finish ahead of Clare, just with the fact that I think they'll have a bit more to prove. But yeah, gone for Waterford in 4th. In 3rd, I've gone for Wexford, and again, this is sort of similar looking at Waterford. Obviously, Keith Rossiter coming in, new manager. He knows Wexford hurling inside and out, having obviously managed Ulart de Bala. It's a massive season for Wexford, because, like, Wexford sort of pre-Davy Fitz for not forever, but like for a long period of time, Wexford were in the doldrums. They were no different to the likes of where Offaly are at now, where the likes of Antrim are at now. Like, they were in the absolute doldrums, and Davy Fitz came in with, a combination of a bit of underage success. He was able to raise them up and get them to a Leinster Championship. So, and you look at Wexford since Davy Fitz has left, and even in the last few years of Davy Fitz, there's been a massive regression, and you do worry that they've had more or less the same panel for a number of years now, and if they don't start getting more younger players through, you could really see Wexford regress. You really, really could. Look, they have good players: Cathal Dunbar, Rory O'Connor, Lee Chin, Kevin Foley, young players like Keane Byrne, Corey Byrne, Dunbar. So it's going to be interesting with Wexford. I've got them in 3rd, just with the fact that new manager coming in, new bounce. I don't think the Leinster Championship is as intense as the Munster Championship, and I think for Keith Rossiter, he'll want to nail down what is his strongest starting 15 before the Leinster Championship comes around. And for that reason, I can see Wexford taking a couple of scalps, but ultimately just about missing out on the league semi-finals. It is worth mentioning, actually, I probably should have mentioned this at the start of the video, but how this works, how the National Hurling League works, is that the top 2 sides from Divisions 1A and Divisions 1B go into the league semi-finals, and the sides who finish bottom of both Division A and 1B go into a relegation playoff. Probably should have explained that at the start of the video, but again, I am very unorganised at the best of times, so apologies. So with that in mind, I've gone for Cork and Kilkenny as 2 sides to get into the league semi-finals. Firstly, Cork. It's a massive year for Pat Ryan, obviously second year in charge. Unlike Waterford, who went out of the Munster Championship last year with an absolute whimper, Cork were maybe a little bit unlucky not to have got out of the Munster Championship. And actually, there is a real good feel-good factor around Cork hurling at the minute. Sean O'Donoghue is going to be the captain this year. You've got a couple of under-20 lads coming in who obviously were part of their All-Ireland success last season. So the likes of Brian Saunderson, Michael Mullins, Owen Downey and Ben Cunningham will all be involved. It's a huge year for Cork. Like, they've had a lot of underage success in the last 5, 6, 7 years. There's a huge amount of depth in Cork, a huge amount of players available to the panel and everything else. And I think Pat Ryan, probably had a similar problem to previous management last season with the fact that how do you find your best starting 15? How do you cope with certain injuries? Looking at Cork going into this year, I do think Cork could be really dark horses for a push at an All-Ireland this year. And winning the league for me would be important for Cork. You're looking at some counties there in terms of Waterford, who obviously won the league a couple of years ago, Clare and everything else. I don't think the league is of absolute almost zero importance to them. But for Cork, there is an element of importance here because they haven't won this competition in 20 years. Are they going to win the Munster Championship? It's hard to know, especially when you've got Limerick in there. Just picking up silverware could be absolutely huge for Cork. And that's why, with the depth of the panel that they have and the amount of players that they have available to them, the fact that they've gotten to the league semi-finals in the last couple of years, I do think Cork are onto something. I really do. Look, they're not going to have Padraig Power. He's going to be injured. But you have Robbie O'Flynn, Alan Connolly and Mark Coleman all back. And I expect big things from Cork, so I've put them in second. In first, I've gone for Kilkenny. More silverware for Derek Lyng. Obviously, having won the Leinster Championship next year, that's going to be the big question. Can they win more silverware this time around? You've got Walter Walsh sticking around. You've got Liam Blanchfield back into the side. You're probably going to have a good few of the O'Loughlin Gales lads rested, so the likes of Mikey Butler and Hugh Lawler probably won't feature at the start of the league, although we saw what Mickey Hart done with Derry, so maybe that actually mightn't be the case, but I do think that is most likely what's going to happen. With the fact that Ballyhale Shamrocks got eliminated from Kilkenny as early as they did, it does open it up, and you think maybe the likes of TJ Reid and Owen Cody could feature a lot more earlier in the league this time around than previous seasons. And again, Kilkenny, much like Cork, have had a good chunk of underage success, what feels like almost forever, to be honest with you. But they've had a huge amount of players coming through, great amount of depth in their team. Their core group of their team, you could argue, is aging in terms of their star players. But I think Derek Lyng will rotate quite a bit. He'll try different things out. But I think Kilkenny have got enough in their panel and enough in their squad to get to those league semi-finals. So I'm going to say Kilkenny first, Cork in second. We'll get on to how both of those two sides will do in the league semi-finals a little bit later. But we will start Division 1B and we'll start our predictions over here. So in sixth, I've gone for Westmeath. Again, it's probably it's another obvious prediction. And again, you're going to have Offaly and Westmeath in a relegation battle, which seems to just happen almost every year. I feel like I've watched that game almost 1,000 times at this stage, and it probably is frustrating a lot of people. But I know they had that mad win against Wexford last year, and you could argue that Westmeath hurling is progressing, but it's just one of them where are they gonna have enough to beat Limerick? Are they gonna have enough to beat Tipperary? Are they gonna have enough to beat Galway? I don't think so. Are they gonna beat Dublin? Probably not. Maybe they might get something against Antrim, but I just don't see it happening. Fair enough, you've got Noel Mitchell, very good hurler. Killian Doyle's obviously been part of Westmeath's core group for a number of years. I just can't see Westmeath doing anything in this division, unfortunately. And it's not a disrespect to Westmeath hurling in any way. It just is where they are, unfortunately. And unfortunately, Westmeath will probably go down to Division 2 next year. They'll come straight back up again. That's just how it's been, unfortunately, over the last few seasons. Fifth, I've gone for Antrim. I was originally going to put Antrim in fourth, actually, ahead of Dublin, but then I saw the amount of players who are actually going to be unavailable to Antrim this season. You're not going to have Ryan Elliott. Sean Elliott isn't going to be there. The Dunloy sort of core group of hurlers is not going to be there this time around for Antrim, which is going to be huge. Keelan Malloy, Owen O'Neill, Joe Maskey, all of them have opted out. I think they're all going travelling from what I've heard. And then you obviously combine that with McManus's retirement as well. So, look, Darren Gleeson is sticking around, which is a positive because that shows that he sees a lot more in Antrim than any of the rest of us. it's a tough one with Antrim. It's hard to know if there is really anything coming through. There's been no suggestions really that there is any underage players coming through at the minute. But at the same time, I do think Antrim still have enough to get the better of Westmeath, and especially Corrigan Park, tough place to go. I think they'll do enough to stave off, end up in that relegation battle. But again, do I see Antrim Hurling progressing right now? Probably not, to be honest with you, but again, it's a very, very hard one to know. In fourth, I've gone for Dublin. Dublin is a very strange one. Obviously, myself as a Dublin fan, I just don't see much progression in Dublin Hurling at the minute, which is a shame. Like, we had a side that got to an under-20 All-Ireland final a couple of years ago. Haven't really seen too many of those lads really make the breakthrough for Dublin, and Dublin are sort of in a weird place where we've got a lot of younger players who've come through in the last few seasons. Where are they going to be good enough in terms of kicking us on? We don't know. And then you've still got a lot of the older guard, the likes of your Danny Sutcliffes, Fergal Whiteleys, these lads all still knocking about and sticking around. Like, it's a massive year for Micheál Donoghue. We need to see some progression with Dublin, because Dublin Hurling at the minute is just very static. Like, for example, we're nowhere near the level of your Limericks, your Galways, your Kilkennys, all the sides of Munster. We're not near their level, but then again, we're probably better than the sides below us in terms of Antrim, Westmeath, Offaly, and like, you could argue that those counties are closing the gap on us. So it's a big year for Dublin. Maybe in the league we might be able to do something with the fact that there's going to be heavy rotation from a lot of other teams, but again, like, I can't see us. We never beat Kilkenny. I can't see us beating Limerick in Croke Park. I think Limerick will flourish the opportunity to get a game in Croke Park this early. Maybe we'll beat Galway, but I just don't. I don't know. I don't know. It's very hard one to call with Dublin this year. Like, you're probably gonna have AJ Murphy come in. He's gonna be a very good young player. Dara Purcell, I'm excited to see more of as well. But yeah, I've got Dublin in fourth. I don't think we'll do enough to push the league semi-final places. In third, I've gone for Galway. I was tempted to throw Galway in the league semi-finals, mainly with the fact that Galway, much like when we were speaking about Cork, like, Galway really need silverware. They really, really do need silverware. Third year now for Henry Shefflin in charge, and you get the feeling that if Galway don't win a Leinster title this year, if they don't progress beyond an All-Ireland semi-final, the writing could be on the wall for Henry Shefflin. It really, really could, and possibly he could be on the way out. It's massive for Galway. It really, really is. Look, we know the talented players that they have, and Conor Whelan, Conor Cooney, Kevin Cooney, Evan Nyland. There's going to be a key group of players that are going to be missing because of St. Thomas's All-Ireland win. You've also got a bunch of players playing Fitzgibbon Cup. So I think there will be heavy rotation with Galway, and I do think they'll finish dead centre and finish third. And then the two sides in the final, I've got Limerick in second. As I said before, I was tempted to throw Galway into these league semi-finals, but the main reason, I suppose, why I have put Limerick in here is obviously, firstly, the players that won't be available for Galway in the early part of the league, and just for Limerick, like, they rotated quite heavily in the league last year, and yet they still went all the way and won it. Do you know what I mean? Like, they rested and rotated their team quite heavily. Aaron Glan would start one week, then he'd come out, then Keane Lynch would come in. There was a lot of heavy rotation across the board from Limerick. I do think the champions, the All-Ireland champs, will take their foot off the gas a little bit more so in the league this year, just with the fact that they stuttered quite heavily in the early part of the Munster Championship last year, and they really struggled to get going. And I think a large part of that was because of the amount of games that they had in the league, and the fact that the league final is so closely connected to the Munster Championship. And I don't think Limerick were quite ready for the Munster Championship when it came around. So I can see Limerick probably rotating a lot more, but in saying that, you look at the teams in this division, and I don't really see anyone finishing better than Limerick other than Tipperary. So you'll probably see Cathal O'Neill, Micheál Houlihan, Donnacha O'Dowling, Conor Boyle, and all these younger lads feature, O'Brien as well. All these younger lads will feature for Limerick, and they'll rotate quite heavily. They'll do enough to get into the league semi-finals, but again, the league again is not a priority for John Coyley. I mean, they're looking at that 5 in a row. They're looking again at that Munster Championship. That's going to be the focus for Limerick without question. And then in first, I've gone for Tipperary. It is an interesting one with Liam Cahill. There has been murmurings of the squad, not happy. Obviously, you have Seamus Callan, who's retired. No Pádraig Maher as well. When I was doing research for this video, I was trying to find Tipperary's panel, and it was reported that Liam Cahill was going to release Tipperary's panel until late January, and it still hasn't been released. So there's a lot of unknowns with Tipperary in terms of what players are going to be in the panel and maybe what other players have opted out. It's a very closed shop from Liam Cahill. Like, I think we will see the likes of Conor Bowe, Dan McCormick, Garrod O'Connor, Conor Stakelum, Mark Keogh. You'll see these younger lads all feature. John McGrath, Noel McGrath, Jason Ford, Jake Morris, like all these core group of players are still going to be there. I think it's a big year for Tipperary in the sense that, since that All-Ireland win in 2019, Tipperary haven't really come close at all to an All-Ireland. And look, that's going to be the focus. Munster as well is going to be huge in terms of getting out of Munster. And I think there's pressure on Liam Cahill, absolutely no doubt about it. But again, I think with the rotation, I think with how Liam Cahill approaches the league, Tipperary will go fairly strong as opposed to other counties, and they will place emphasis on doing very well in the league and possibly picking up silverware, because I think that would mean a whole deal for Liam Cahill. So I've got Tipperary in first. So in the semi-finals, that would leave the first place side from Division 1A taking on the second place side from Division 1B, and vice versa, with the second place side from Division 1A taking on the first place side from Division 1B. So, yeah, that would leave Tipperary versus Cork and Kilkenny versus Limerick. I would go with... I predicted Tipperary to win the league earlier in the year. So, am I really going to change my mind already? Probably not. I'll go with Tipperary to beat Cork. I'll go with Kilkenny to beat Limerick. Kilkenny, Tipperary, final. Repeat the 2019 All-Ireland Hurling final. I'll go with Tipperary. I just think Tipperary are going to place a lot of emphasis on the league. I really do. I think it's going to be of huge importance for Tipperary to pick up silverware, especially with the Munster Championship as well. We saw how Liam Cahill won the league with Waterford a couple of years ago. Look, and ultimately it went, it proved to be his downfall in the end, because Waterford went on to have such a poor league. But yeah, I just fancy Tipperary to do it. I fancy them to win the league, and I think there's, with the depth of the panel that they have, the underage players coming through, the younger players, I think Tipperary can do it. Moving on to Division 2A, as I said, my knowledge of these lower divisions is very few and far between. You just see a lot of the same things in hurling a lot of the time, don't you? The same teams coming up and down every year. It's very repetitive. Like, you could see Meath getting relegated here, down maybe, being close, thereabouts in terms of relegation. I think Kerry will be fine in Division 2A. I don't think they'll go down. I don't think they'll get promoted. Kildare have been, they got to the Division 2 final last year. Maybe they could potentially do something here. I think it will be between Laois and Carlow. I think they'll be first and second, and I think Carlow are going to continue riding a crest of a wave as they did last year, obviously winning the Joe McDonagh, and I think they will be the side to get promoted. But yeah, that's going to be the hurling predictions. Let's run through some of this weekend's games then that are obviously happening in the Allianz National Hurling League. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we've sort of spoke about every team already. Galway Westmeath, Galway win. Dublin Tipperary, I'm going to go with Tipperary to edge that one, and Limerick, yeah, they will beat Antrim quite comfortably there, in my opinion. Looking at 1A, a few better games here. Clare Cork is probably the pick of the games. I'll go with a draw. Actually, you know what? No, I'll go with Cork. I think Cork will be well better placed to beat Clare. Kilkenny Wexford, I'll go with Kilkenny. And Offaly Waterford. There's a chance there for Offaly, there is a chance for Offaly to get something in that game, in fairness. But I'll go with Waterford to just about sneak it and get over the line. But anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below, what are your predictions for the National Hurling League in Division 1A and 1B. Will you be watching much of the hurling games? Let me know. We'll certainly try and do as many preview and review shows as possible. And yeah, look, I'm excited for when Limerick come to Croke Park, to be fair, because it's always, it'll be great to get a look at them, in fairness. But yeah, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Aaron. Speak to y'all soon.